at my daughter's rehearsal dinner. She tapped her glass and thanked everyone who had truly been there for her. Then she turned to me and said, "Dad, I wanted you to hear this from me. Mom's husband is walking me down the aisle. He fits better with his family. I had already paid the venue deposit, the caterer, the photographer, and most of the flowers. I had also spent 6 weekends building the walnut ceremony arch. She had sketched on a napkin. Still, I didn't argue. I told her it was her wedding and her choice. 10 minutes later, I found my place card at the last table beside the service doors. While my ex-wife handed me a folder of new invoices, she expected me to settle before morning. I closed the folder and took it home. By noon the next day, the wedding was still happening, but several people had finally learned the difference between inviting a father and treating him like an open account. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 54 and owned a woodworking shop outside Grand Rapids, Michigan. 9 of us built cabinets, restaurant bars, and furniture meant to be passed down. Her mother, Rebecca, and I divorced when Emma was 12. There was no affair or explosive courtroom battle. We had become 2 people who could turn a grocery list into an argument. Rebecca wanted a polished life with dinner parties and carefully planned holidays. I was building the shop, working late, and too tired to understand how lonely she had become. We both contributed to the failure. Rebecca married Glenn Foster 4 years later. Glenn worked for a regional bank, wore good suits, remembered birthdays, and knew which fork to use at charity dinners. He was not a bad man. Emma liked him, and I was grateful that he treated her kindly. I never asked her to choose between us. I paid my support on time, attended school concerts, and answered when her first apartment flooded at 2 in the morning. I paid her tuition at Michigan State directly to the university and bought her a reliable used Honda when her old car died. I wasn't perfect. I once missed a recital because a job went wrong in Lansing, and Emma remembered that longer than the many events I attended. I accepted it. When Emma got engaged to Colin Whitaker, she came to my shop on a rainy Thursday afternoon. She was 27, working in marketing for a medical supply company, and so excited she could barely finish a sentence. She showed me a picture of Hawthorne Ridge, a renovated barn venue surrounded by maple trees. "We don't want anything ridiculous," she said, "just warm and elegant." I smiled because I had known Emma long enough to understand that warm and elegant could become expensive very quickly. She asked if I could help with the wedding. I told her I had set aside $32,000. It was more than I had originally intended, but the shop had done well, and she was my only child. Her eyes filled. She hugged me so hard, my glasses shifted. "You have no idea what this means," she said. I thought I did. The original budget was a little over $46,000. Colin and Emma would contribute some. Rebecca and Glenn would cover the rehearsal dinner and dress, and Colin's parents would pay for the honeymoon. My money went directly to the venue, caterer, photographer, and florist. Then the plans grew: upgraded chairs, another cocktail station, and greenery hanging from the rafters. Each change seemed manageable by itself. I gave in too often, and that was my mistake. The one part I volunteered to create was the ceremony arch. I shaped 2 old walnut slabs after closing, built hidden supports into the base, and oiled the wood until the grain glowed. On the back, where no guest would see it, I carved for Emma, who taught me what lasts. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private room in a downtown restaurant. Rebecca had organized it, which meant the place cards matched the flowers, and even the butter had been shaped into little roses. When I arrived, Glenn greeted me with a firm handshake. He looked uncomfortable, though I didn't know why. Emma kissed my cheek, then hurried away to deal with a missing bridesmaid. Colin's parents were polite but cool. During drinks, Thomas Whitaker stood beside me near the window. "I'm glad you decided to come," he said. The wording caught me. Why wouldn't I? He took a slow sip. "Families are complicated." Rebecca mentioned there had been distance. Before I could ask what that meant, the coordinator called everyone to dinner. Emma made her announcement after the entrees. She thanked Rebecca for being her rock, Glenn for showing her what steady support looked like, and the Whitakers for welcoming her. Then she told me Glenn would walk her down the aisle, The room went quiet in the particular way a room does when people already know something you don't. Emma gave me a nervous smile. He fits better with his family. With the pictures and everything. I hope you understand. Heat rose into my face. I saw her at 6 years old in oversized safety goggles, building a birdhouse beside me. Then I saw the adults waiting to find out whether I would make the evening ugly. It's your wedding, I said. You should choose what feels right to you. Relief moved across Emma's face so quickly that it hurt more than the announcement. I stepped into the hallway after dinner and found the seating chart displayed on an easel. Rebecca and Glenn were at table 1 with Colin's parents. Emma's grandparents and close family filled the next few tables. My name was at table 14, the last table in the room, beside 2 co-workers of Colin's parents and the service doors. Every time the doors swung open, the kitchen lights would hit the table. The wedding planner, Marisol, noticed me looking. She quietly admitted that she had questioned the placement and that Rebecca and Emma had both confirmed it. Rebecca caught me near the coat room as people were leaving. She handed me a cream folder. These need to be cleared before tomorrow, she said. The vendors have been calling. Inside were invoices for a champagne display, premium bourbon at the bar, lounge furniture for the patio, an expanded floral installation, a late-night food station, and upgraded transportation for the wedding party. The unpaid balance came to just under $19,000. Every invoice listed me as the billing contact. I didn't approve these, I said. Rebecca lowered her voice. We discussed them. You mentioned some ideas. That isn't approval. Daniel, please don't become difficult the night before your daughter's wedding. Emma had walked up behind her. What's happening? Rebecca sighed as if I were embarrassing both of them. Your father is worried about the final invoices. Emma looked at the folder, then at me. Dad, can we not do this now? Everything's already ordered. Did you authorize these under my name? She glanced toward the dining room. Mom handled the vendors. I assumed you two had worked it out. That wasn't an answer, but it told me she had never bothered to ask. I closed the folder. I'll review them tonight. Rebecca touched my arm. They have to be paid by 10 tomorrow. Then I'll review them before 10. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat. At a red light, my hands started shaking. I could pay, though it would drain much of the shop's cash reserve. What shook me was the arrangement Glenn at the front. To me by the kitchen. My name still on the bills. At home, I sat at my dining table and opened my laptop. I pulled up every contract and receipt from the previous 11 months. The pattern was clear. I had authorized $34,600, nearly all already paid. The new charges came through emails from Rebecca and Emma asking vendors to add them to my account. Marisol had twice warned that optional additions were not guaranteed until I approved and paid. Rebecca had replied, Daniel will handle it. There was something else in the email chain. Thomas Whitaker had asked Rebecca for a short family history for the wedding program and speeches. Rebecca wrote that Glenn had helped raise Emma after her biological father largely stepped away, both emotionally and financially. I read the sentence 3 times. Then I found an earlier email in which Linda Whitaker praised Rebecca for managing Emma's college costs without reliable help. Rebecca thanked her and never corrected it. I did not sleep much. At 7 the next morning, I called Marisol. I told her the wedding should proceed, and that every item covered by the signed base contracts was to remain. I would honor every amount I had approved, but I would not pay the optional additions requested without my authorization. Marisol was silent for a second. I was afraid this might happen, she said. I documented the changes separately for that reason. Some extras had already incurred preparation fees. I paid 1 florist labor charge because the work had begun. I was not leaving a local business with the loss. The remaining additions could be removed or reduced. I confirmed the original contracts, declined the unapproved upgrades, and directed vendors to discuss replacement payment with Emma and Colin. At 8:20, Rebecca called. What did you do? I paid what I agreed to pay. The florist is taking down half the ceiling installation. It was never paid for. You're punishing Emma because she chose Glenn. I looked through my kitchen window at the maple tree in my yard. Her choice about the aisle is hers. These invoices are mine. Emma called 3 minutes later, crying and furious. She said the champagne wall was gone. The bridesmaids had no upgraded shuttle, and the patio would look empty. I let her finish. The ceremony, dinner, bar, music, flowers, cake, and photographer are all there. I said, "You are still having a beautiful wedding. You said you would help me. I've paid more than I promised. I did not say you and your mother could order anything you wanted in my name. You waited until my wedding day. I saw the invoices last night." There was a pause. Her voice changed from angry to wounded. "So you are making this about Glenn?" "No. Emma, you can choose who walks beside you. You can choose where I sit. You don't get to make those choices, and also choose what I consent to pay for." She hung up. I considered staying home. In my suit, I held the walnut cufflinks Emma had once given me and couldn't put them on. Then I remembered the arch beneath the maples. I had built it as a gift. And disappointment did not turn a gift into a loan. I put on the cufflinks and drove to the venue. The wedding was smaller than Rebecca had planned. Not smaller than Emma had first wanted. There were flowers on every table, good wine at the bar, and ordinary venue chairs on the patio. No one went hungry. No one was stranded. Rebecca behaved as if I had removed the roof. She intercepted me before the ceremony. The Whitakers had to cover the shuttle. Do you understand how humiliating that was? Did you tell them why? Her mouth tightened. I told them you withdrew support at the last minute. Then you didn't tell them why. Glenn stood a few feet away, adjusting his tie. He looked from her to me. Rebecca told me you had approved the final budget. He said. She was wrong. He frowned. She also said you'd only paid the venue deposit. Before I could respond, Rebecca took his arm. We do not have time for Daniel's accounting performance. They walked away. My assigned seat was exactly where the chart had shown. From table 14. I could see the backs of heads at the front and a narrow slice of the dance floor. Each time the service doors opened, warm kitchen air rolled over us. Thomas Whitaker approached before the ceremony and asked if we could speak outside. He held his phone, and his expression was no longer cool. Rebecca asked us to pay several balances this morning. He said. She said you pulled all your funding. The venue manager showed me the account summary because one of the invoices was being transferred to us. I said nothing. You paid most of this wedding. Yes. And Emma's college. There it was. I explained that I had paid the university directly and helped with her car. I did not show him bank statements or turn the conversation into a trial. I offered only what he had asked. Thomas rubbed his jaw. We were told something very different. Does Colin know? You'll have to ask him. The ceremony began 20 minutes later. I sat in the third row on the far side, behind an aunt I had met once. Rebecca entered first. Then Emma appeared at the end of the aisle with Glenn. She looked beautiful. That was the hardest part. Hurt did not erase love. I could be ashamed of how she treated me and still remember teaching her to ride a bicycle. Glenn walked her to the arch I had built. When he placed her hand in Colin's, Emma glanced at the dark walnut curve above them. Her eyes moved over the grain, then briefly found mine. I nodded once. She looked away. At the reception, Thomas and Linda asked Colin why they had been told I was absent. He believed I had paid only a few deposits. Emma admitted she knew I was covering most of the wedding, but claimed her mother handled the financial discussions. Colin quietly took her outside. They talked on the patio for nearly half an hour. Rebecca came to my table and leaned down. Are you satisfied now? She whispered. I haven't said anything to them that wasn't true. You brought receipts into our daughter's wedding. You brought the invoices. For once, she had no immediate reply. She straightened and went after Emma. Later, Glenn sat in the empty chair beside me. He stared at his untouched drink. I didn't know, he said. Which part? Most of it. He exhaled. Rebecca told me she paid half of Emma's tuition after scholarships. I thought you'd had some rough years with the business. The shop had rough years. I paid anyway. He nodded slowly. She told me walking Emma was her idea because you weren't comfortable doing it. That one landed differently. I looked toward the patio, where Emma stood with her arms folded while Colin spoke. It wasn't my idea, I said. Glenn closed his eyes for a moment. I'm sorry, Daniel. I believed him. The reception continued. The champagne display never appeared, and no one except Rebecca seemed to care. Colin danced with his mother. There was no father-daughter dance. Emma had removed it from the schedule weeks earlier. I stayed through the cake cutting. Before I left, I walked behind the ceremony space and ran my fingers over the small carving on the back of the arch. For Emma, who taught me what lasts. That night, the words felt foolish. I almost took the arch home, but I didn't. It belonged to her. The wedding did not collapse. Emma and Colin remained married. Their photographs were lovely. Anyone seeing them online would have thought the day went exactly as planned. But the arrangement beneath the photographs changed. The following week, Thomas sent a thank you note, and Linda apologized for judging me by a story she had never verified. Colin came to the shop alone that Saturday. I need to know if Emma was part of the lie, he said. I told him the truth. I knew Rebecca had written the emails. I knew Emma understood I was paying most of the wedding. I did not know exactly what she had told him about my role as her father. I'm not going to build your opinion of your wife for you, I said. Ask her. He nodded. Before leaving, he noticed a photograph on my office wall of Emma, at 16, holding the first nightstand she had built with me. She told me Glenn taught her how to use tools. He said, Glenn may have taught her some things too. Colin stared at the picture for a few seconds, then walked out. Rebecca tried to recover control by sending a long email to both families. She said stress had caused miscommunication and claimed I had used money to demand a ceremonial role. Thomas replied to the group with one question. Can you show us where Daniel made that demand? She never answered. That was the point when her version stopped bending and broke. Not because I exposed her in a speech, but because she made a claim too specific to survive a simple question. Emma did not speak to me for almost 4 months. Thanksgiving came, and she spent it with Colin's family. I mailed no guilt-laden card. I sent a simple message saying my door was open when she was ready to talk honestly. During those months, I promoted my foreman, Luis, and stopped keeping every free evening available in case Emma called. I joined a Saturday hiking group. Peace felt empty before it felt peaceful. Emma finally came to the shop in February. Snow was melting into gray piles along the parking lot. She stood just inside the office holding a cardboard box. Inside were the 2 base pieces of the wedding arch. She and Colin had moved into a smaller apartment and had nowhere to store it. I couldn't throw these away, she said. I ran my thumb over a scratch in the finish. You could have called. I was embarrassed. We sat across from each other at my scarred work table. Emma cried, but she did not ask me to comfort her before she spoke. She admitted that Rebecca had shaped the story for years. Whenever I paid for something, her mother described it as a legal obligation or a guilty gesture. Whenever Glenn attended something, it became proof that he was the dependable father. Emma said she had known those descriptions were unfair, especially once she was old enough to understand the tuition statements. Why didn't you correct her? I asked. Emma looked down at her hands. Because Mom's version made everything easier. The Whitakers liked the picture of us she gave them. Glenn looked polished. You hate those social things. And I told myself you wouldn't care. You didn't ask me. I know. Then she said the one thing I needed to hear. I thought I could choose Glenn publicly and still count on you privately. I treated your help like it didn't belong to a person. There was no excuse inside the apology. That mattered. I told her I did not resent Glenn for walking her. I resented being erased, so the choice would look cleaner. And I would never again pay an expense that someone placed in my name without asking. I understand, she said. We did not fix 20 years in one afternoon. Trust is built more like furniture than like a movie ending. You measure, join, test, and sometimes take a piece apart when it does not sit square. Emma began with small things. She called when she said she would. She corrected a relative who repeated that I had abandoned her after the divorce. She and Colin invited me to dinner. And for the first time, no one mentioned what anything had cost. Her relationship with Rebecca changed too. They still spoke, but Emma stopped letting her mother translate everyone else's motives. Glenn remained in their lives. He and I were never friends, though we became honest with each other. That was enough. A year after the wedding, Emma and Colin bought a modest house. They asked if I could help build a dining table. This time, Emma came to the lumberyard with me, chose the boards, and paid for the wood herself. We used the walnut bases from the wedding arch for the legs. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, We carried the finished table into their dining room. Sunlight came through the bare windows and caught the grain. Emma ran her fingers over the small carving I had moved beneath the tabletop, where only the family would see it. For Emma, who taught me what lasts. The sentence no longer felt foolish. Love lasted. So did consequences. And sometimes a relationship lasted only after the people inside it stopped confusing love with unlimited permission. I lost the aisle walk, the front row seat, and the belief that paying quietly was enough. I gained a daughter who saw me as a person and a life in which generosity came with consent. These days, when I close the shop in the evening, I no longer check my phone with that old anxious feeling that someone might need another rescue. I turn off the lights, brush the sawdust from my sleeves, and go home in peace. If your adult child excluded you from the honor but still expected you to cover every bill, would you have paid or drawn the same line I did?